Have you ever asked yourself why you feel tired all the time, even when you are chasing your dreams and doing everything you thought would make you happy? And deep inside, there is a quiet voice asking if this is really success or just a race that never ends. Because this question is not just yours. It was also the question that changed the life of Arianna Huffington. And today, here on English to Inspire, you are not just listening to a story. You are facing a mirror. So if you feel something inside you already, take 1 second and subscribe, because this journey might be exactly what you need right now. And as you listen, I want you to think about your own life, your own tired mind, your own silent doubts, because her story is not just about success. It is about waking up when everyone else is still asleep. Arianna was born far from the big cities of power and money. She grew up in Greece, in a simple environment, but with something very powerful inside her home. And that was her mother's voice. Always strong, always clear, always telling her that she could become more, do more, and live a bigger life. And when you hear this, you need to stop and think, because not everyone has someone like that. Not everyone has a voice pushing them forward. So, what about you? Who is pushing you? Or are you just waiting for motivation to appear one day? Because it will not. It never does. And Arianna did not wait. She listened, she absorbed, and she started to believe that her life could be different, even when nothing around her showed that path clearly. As a young girl, she was not rich. She did not have special advantages, and she did not live in a place where big dreams were common. But she had something that most people ignore. She had hunger. And not the kind of hunger for food, but the hunger to grow, the hunger to learn, the hunger to escape a small life. And this is where I need to be direct with you. Because many people say they want success, but they do not feel this hunger. They want comfort. They want easy steps. They want results without pain. But that is not how it works. Not for her, not for anyone. And if you are honest with yourself right now, you know exactly what I mean. You know the difference between wanting and needing, and Arianna needed to build something bigger than her reality. Her mother, Ellie, was not just a parent. She was a guide. She believed in education, in discipline, and in courage. And she repeated these ideas again and again until they became part of Arianna's identity. And this repetition is important because your mind works the same way. What you hear every day becomes your truth. So let me ask you again. What are you listening to every day? Excuses or responsibility? Fear or action? Because this is shaping your future right now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. And Arianna chose to listen to strength. Even when life was uncertain, even when the path was not clear, she kept moving, step by step, with that quiet confidence growing inside her. And then something important started to form inside her mind. A belief that she could leave, that she could go beyond Greece, that she could enter a bigger world. And this belief was not comfortable. It was scary, because leaving what you know always is. But growth is always uncomfortable. Always. And if you're waiting to feel ready before you act, you will stay in the same place forever. And she understood this early. Even without knowing all the answers, she started preparing herself for something bigger, learning, reading, thinking, dreaming, and slowly, the idea of a new life stopped being just a dream and started becoming a decision. And that decision would soon take her to a completely different world, where nothing would be easy, but everything would be possible. When you step into a new world, where you do not understand the language, the culture, or even the way people think, you quickly realize that dreams are not enough, because now you need courage, real courage, the kind that shows up when you feel lost. And this is exactly what happened to Arianna Huffington when she left Greece and moved to England. Because at that moment, everything changed. The comfort disappeared. The familiar voices were gone. And suddenly she was just a young woman in a place that did not wait for her, did not slow down for her, and did not care if she felt ready or not. So let me ask you something simple but honest. What do you do when life does not wait for you? Do you move forward or do you step back into safety? Arriving in England was not a romantic story. It was not easy or smooth, and it was definitely not comfortable, because she had to learn English deeply. Not just basic words, but the kind of language that allows you to think, argue, express ideas, and compete with people who had been speaking it their whole lives. And this is where most people quit. This is where excuses grow. Because it is easy to say that the system is against you, that others have advantages, that you started too late. But she did not build that mindset. She built discipline instead. She studied harder. She listened more. She paid attention to every detail, and slowly, step by step, she started to transform weakness into strength. And this is a lesson you cannot ignore. Because your biggest disadvantage can become your greatest weapon if you decide to face it instead of running from it. At the same time, she was dealing with something even deeper. The feeling of not belonging. The silent pressure of being different. The moments when you look around and feel that everyone else fits perfectly while you are still trying to understand the rules of the game. And this feeling can break people. It can make you small. It can make you hide. But it can also do the opposite. It can make you stronger, sharper, more aware. And Arianna chose the second path. She did not hide. She observed. She learned. She adapted. And she kept pushing forward, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it was lonely. And this is where I need to challenge you again, because growth is lonely sometimes. And if you are always looking for comfort and approval, you will never reach your next level. She entered University of Cambridge, one of the most respected institutions in the world. And now, the pressure became even higher, because she was no longer just trying to survive. She was trying to prove herself in an environment full of brilliant minds, people who were confident, prepared, and already part of that system. And again, she had a choice, to feel intimidated or to rise, to step back or to step forward. And what she did was simple but powerful. She worked harder than most. She stayed focused when others relaxed. She kept her vision clear, even when the path was difficult. And over time, something started to change. People began to notice her, to respect her, to see her not as an outsider, but as someone who belonged. But let me be very clear with you. This did not happen overnight. There was no magic moment, no sudden transformation. It was built day by day, effort by effort, choice by choice. And this is the part that most people do not like, because it is slow, it is repetitive, and it requires patience. But this is where real growth happens, not in big dramatic moments, but in small, consistent actions. And if you look at your own life right now, you will see the same pattern. The results you have are coming from what you do every day, not what you say you will do someday. And Arianna understood this deeply, so she kept going. She kept learning, and she kept building a new version of herself, one that was stronger, more capable, and ready for even bigger challenges that were coming next. There is a moment in life when ambition starts to feel like a fire inside your chest, and it pushes you forward, even when you are tired, even when you are unsure. And for Arianna Huffington, that fire became stronger during her time at University of Cambridge, because now she was not just trying to adapt, she was trying to stand out. She wanted to prove not only to others, but also to herself, that she belonged among the best. And this is where things start to get dangerous if you are not aware, because ambition can build your future, but it can also slowly destroy your peace. And most people do not notice this until it is too late. So I want you to think carefully. Are you chasing success? Or are you running from something inside you that you do not want to face? At Cambridge, she studied economics, but what she was really learning was how to compete, how to think fast, how to express ideas with confidence, and how to push her limits again and again. And she did something that most people avoid. She stepped into leadership, becoming the president of the Cambridge Union, a position that required courage, communication, and constant performance. Because now she was not just another student. She was visible. She was being watched, judged, and evaluated, and this pressure can break people. But it can also shape them into something stronger. And she chose to grow, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it demanded more energy, more focus, more sacrifice. But here is the part that you need to understand deeply, because this is where many people make a mistake. She started to build an identity around achievement, around recognition, around being the best. And at first, this feels good. It gives you validation. It gives you a sense of control. It makes you feel like you are moving forward. But slowly, without noticing, it becomes a trap. Because now your value depends on results, on external approval, on always doing more, always being more. And that pressure never stops. It only grows. And if you are not careful, you will lose yourself inside this cycle. And I am asking you directly, are you already in this cycle? Are you always trying to prove something? Always chasing the next goal without ever feeling satisfied? She wrote her first book at a young age, showing the world that she had something to say, something to share, and this brought attention, opportunities, and recognition. And from the outside, everything looked perfect. A young woman, intelligent, successful, moving fast in a world that rewards ambition. But inside, something else was forming. Something quieter, something more dangerous. The habit of overworking, the belief that rest was weakness, the idea that slowing down meant falling behind. And this is a belief that many people carry today, maybe even you, because the world keeps telling you to do more, to push harder, to never stop. But no one talks about the cost of that mindset. And step by step, without making a big announcement, without a clear decision, she started to live in this rhythm of constant action, constant pressure, constant movement, always thinking about the next step, the next achievement, the next goal. And this creates a life that looks impressive, but feels exhausting. And if you are honest with yourself, you know this feeling. When your body is tired but your mind does not stop. When you are always busy but not always fulfilled. And this is where I need to be very direct with you, because if you do not learn how to manage this now, it will grow. It will take more from you. Your energy, your focus, your health, and even your happiness. And this silent build-up, this invisible pressure, was growing inside her, preparing the stage for a moment that would change everything in a way she never expected. There comes a point where the outside world starts to clap for you, where people look at your life and say that you made it, that you are successful, that you are winning. And this is exactly where Arianna Huffington found herself after leaving University of Cambridge, because her career started to grow fast. She became a recognized writer. She appeared in media. She entered conversations that mattered. And from the outside, everything looked like a dream coming true. But here is the truth that most people do not want to hear. Success on the outside does not guarantee peace on the inside. And if you do not understand this now, life will teach you later. And it will not be a gentle lesson. She wrote books. She built a strong voice in political and cultural discussions. And she became known for her intelligence and strong opinions. And this gave her power, influence, and access to important spaces. But it also brought something else. Something heavy. Constant pressure to stay relevant, to stay sharp, to always be prepared. Because once you reach a certain level, people expect you to remain there. They expect consistency, performance, and results. And this expectation can quietly take control of your life. Because now you are not just working to grow. You are working to maintain an image, to protect your position. And this is exhausting in a way that most people do not see. And here is where things become even more complex. Because when your identity is connected to your achievements, you start to believe that slowing down is dangerous, that resting means losing, that taking a break will make you fall behind. And this belief creates a cycle that is very hard to escape. Because even when your body asks for rest, your mind says no, keep going, do more, push harder. And maybe you know this voice. Maybe you hear it in your own life, telling you that you cannot stop, that you cannot relax, that you need to prove something again and again. And if that is true, then you are walking the same path she was walking, a path that looks strong from the outside, but feels heavy on the inside. Her days became full. Meetings, writing, traveling, speaking, always moving, always producing, always connected. And little by little, something important started to disappear. Her connection with herself, her ability to pause, to breathe, to reflect. And this is something very serious, because when you lose this connection, you lose clarity, you lose balance, and you start living on automatic mode, reacting instead of choosing. And this is how many people live today. Busy, distracted, always doing something, but not always aware of why they are doing it. And I want you to stop for a moment and ask yourself, are you living with intention, or are you just reacting to everything around you? From the outside, her life was growing, but inside, the pressure was building. Slowly, silently, without warning signs that were clear enough to stop her. And this is how it happens. Not with a big explosion at first, but with small signals: tiredness, stress, lack of sleep, mental noise. And most people ignore these signs. They think it is normal. They think it is the price of success. But the truth is, this price is too high, and sooner or later, it needs to be paid. And in her case, that moment was getting closer. A moment that would not ask for permission. A moment that would force her to stop, to look at her life, and to finally understand what she had been ignoring for so long. Sometimes life does not send you a small warning. Sometimes it stops you completely, without asking, without giving you time to prepare. And that is exactly what happened to Arianna Huffington at a moment when everything seemed to be working, when her career was strong, when her name was respected, and when her schedule was full. Because one day, after pushing herself for too long, sleeping too little, and ignoring the signals of her own body again and again, she collapsed. And this was not just a moment of tiredness, it was a complete shutdown. Her body simply said no more, and she fell, hit her head, and woke up in a pool of blood. And I want you to pause here for a second, because this is not just part of a story. This is reality. This is what happens when you keep ignoring your limits. This moment was not just physical, it was emotional. It was mental. It was a wake-up call that she could not avoid. Because for the first time, she was forced to stop, to look at her life from the outside, to see clearly what she had been doing to herself. And this is something many people never do. They keep running. They keep pushing. They keep distracting themselves. But she did not have that option anymore. And in that silence, in that forced pause, a very uncomfortable question appeared. What is the point of all this success if your body is breaking, if your mind is exhausted, and if your life has no balance? Doctors told her what she already knew deep inside, that her lifestyle was unsustainable, that the lack of sleep, the constant pressure, the endless work had a cost. And now that cost was real. It was visible. It was painful. And this is where many people try to go back to the same life. They promise to change. But after a few days, they return to the same habits, the same routine, the same excuses. But something was different this time, because this was not just a scare. It was a clear message, a line that had been crossed, and she understood that if she continued in the same direction, the next consequence could be even worse. And now I need to be very direct with you, because you might not collapse today. You might not fall and hit your head, but that does not mean you are safe. Because exhaustion builds slowly, stress accumulates quietly, and one day, it shows up in a way you cannot ignore. So ask yourself honestly, how are you treating your body? How are you treating your mind? Are you respecting your limits, or are you pushing them every single day without thinking about the long term? Because this is not about fear. This is about responsibility. Your life is your responsibility. Your health is your responsibility, and no success is worth losing that. Lying there, recovering, she had time to think. Real time, not distracted time. Not busy time, but deep, honest reflection. And this is where something powerful started to change. Because when you are forced to stop, you start to see things clearly. You start to question your choices, your habits, your priorities. And she realized that she had been living in a way that looked successful, but was not sustainable. And more importantly, was not truly fulfilling, and this realization was not comfortable. It was not easy to accept, but it was necessary, because without it, nothing would change. That moment on the floor, that moment of collapse, became a turning point, not because it was dramatic, but because she decided to listen. She decided to learn. She decided that this was not the end, but a new beginning. And this is where everything starts to shift, because awareness creates change. And now she was ready to redefine what success really means. Not based on what the world says, but based on what truly matters. And this new way of thinking would soon guide her into a completely different path. One that would not only transform her own life, but also impact millions of people around the world. After a moment that forces you to stop, you have two choices. You can go back to the same life and pretend nothing happened, or you can face the truth and rebuild everything from a new perspective. And this was the decision that Arianna Huffington had to make after her collapse. Because now, she could no longer ignore what she had felt. She could no longer pretend that exhaustion was normal. And she could no longer define success in the same way. So instead of rushing back into the same routine, she did something that most people avoid. She slowed down. She started to question everything. Her habits, her priorities, her beliefs about work, money, and what it really means to live a good life. She began to understand that success is not only about money and power, it is also about well-being, about health, about having the energy to enjoy the life you are building. And this may sound simple, but it is not easy to accept, because the world keeps telling you a different story. The world tells you to push harder, to sleep less, to sacrifice now and maybe live later. But later is not guaranteed, and this is something you need to hear clearly, because many people are waiting for the perfect moment to enjoy life, and that moment never comes. It keeps moving, it keeps escaping, and suddenly years have passed, and you realize that you were always chasing, but never arriving. So she created a new definition, a definition that included what she called the third metric of success, which is not only money and power, but also well-being, wisdom, and the ability to disconnect and recharge. And this idea changed everything, because now she was not just working for results, she was working for balance. And that required new habits, real changes, not just ideas. Because thinking is not enough. You need action. You need discipline. You need to build a different way of living. Step by step, day by day, she started to respect sleep, not as a weakness, but as a foundation. Something essential for clarity, for energy, for performance. And this is where many people resist, because they believe that sleeping more means doing less. But the truth is the opposite. When you rest well, you think better, you decide better, you act better, and your results improve. But if you are always tired, your decisions become weaker, your focus disappears, and your productivity drops, even if you are busy all the time. And I want you to be honest. How many times have you worked long hours but achieved very little because your mind was exhausted? She also started to create small rituals, moments to disconnect, to breathe, to step away from the constant noise of work and information. And these small moments became powerful, because they helped her reconnect with herself, with her thoughts, with her purpose. And this is something you can start today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Even if it is just a few minutes. Because change does not need to be big at the beginning. It needs to be consistent. And consistency creates transformation over time. And little by little, her life started to feel different. Not slower in a negative way, but more intentional, more balanced, more aligned with what truly matters. And this new mindset did not make her less ambitious. It made her smarter. It made her more aware. It gave her the ability to build something bigger without destroying herself in the process. And this is the lesson you cannot ignore. Success without health is failure. Success without balance is fragile. And if you do not redefine what success means for you, the world will define it for you. And that definition may lead you to the same breaking point she experienced. But now, with this new vision, she was ready to build again, this time in a way that would impact not only her life, but millions of others. When you rebuild your life with a new mindset, the real test is not in what you say, but in what you do. Because ideas are easy, but action is where most people fail. And this is where Arianna Huffington showed something powerful. Because even after redefining success, she did not stop creating. She did not step away from ambition. Instead, she chose to build something even bigger. But this time with more awareness, more intention, and a different relationship with work. And this decision led her to create the Huffington Post, a platform that would soon become one of the most influential media voices in the world. At the beginning, it was not perfect. It was not easy. And it was definitely not accepted by everyone. Because when you try to build something new, especially in a competitive space like media, people will question you, criticize you, and sometimes even doubt your ability to succeed. And this is where many people stop. They take criticism personally. They lose confidence. They step back. But she did something different. She listened. She learned. But she did not let negativity control her actions. She kept moving forward, adjusting, improving, and staying focused on her vision. And this is a skill you need to develop. The ability to hear feedback without losing your direction. Building the Huffington Post required long hours, strategy, leadership, and constant decisions. And here is where things could have gone wrong again, because she could have returned to the same old habits. Overworking, ignoring rest, pushing herself to exhaustion. But this time, she was more aware. She had learned from her past, and even though the pressure was still there, she approached it differently. She started to integrate balance into her routine, making space for rest, for recovery, for clarity, and this allowed her to perform at a high level without reaching the same breaking point as before. The platform grew quickly, attracting readers, writers, and attention from around the world, and success came again. But now it felt different. It was not just about growth. It was about impact, about creating conversations, about giving people a voice. And this shift is important, because when your work has meaning, when it connects to something bigger than just results, it gives you a different kind of energy, a deeper motivation that is not based only on pressure, but on purpose. And this is something you should think about. Because if your work has no meaning, it will always feel heavier than it needs to be. But let me be honest with you. Even with this new mindset, it was not always easy. There were still challenges, still moments of stress, still situations that demanded more than she wanted to give. And this is normal. Growth is not perfect. Balance is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is something you need to protect every day, through choices, through habits, through awareness. And if you stop paying attention, it can disappear quickly, and you go back to old patterns without even noticing. So she kept learning, she kept adjusting, she kept reminding herself of what really matters. And this is where repetition becomes powerful again, because what you repeat becomes your reality. If you repeat stress, you live in stress. If you repeat balance, you start to live with more control, more clarity, more energy. And this is your responsibility. No one else can do this for you. No one else can build your habits, your mindset, your discipline. It is on you. And if you want a different life, you need to start making different choices, even when they are uncomfortable, even when they are not popular. And as the Huffington Post continued to grow, reaching millions of people and becoming a major force in media, something else started to grow inside her as well. A deeper sense of purpose. A desire not just to inform people, but to help them live better, to help them avoid the same mistakes she had made. And this desire would soon lead her to focus on something that most people ignore until it is too late. Something simple, but powerful. Something that can change everything if you take it seriously. And that is the way you treat your rest, your energy, and your life itself. At some point, success stops being only about what you build, and it starts being about what you teach, what you share, and how many people you help avoid the same mistakes you made. And this is where Arianna Huffington took a powerful turn in her journey. Because after building the Huffington Post into a global platform, she could have continued focusing only on growth, on numbers, on expansion. But instead, She chose to focus on something that most people ignore, something that is simple but deeply important, and that is sleep, rest, and recovery. Because she understood from her own experience that without these, everything else starts to break. She began to speak openly about her collapse, about the cost of overworking, and about the dangerous belief that success requires constant exhaustion. And this honesty was not common, because in a world that celebrates hustle and non-stop work, talking about rest can sound weak. But she challenged that idea directly. She said clearly that burnout is not a sign of commitment. It is a sign of imbalance. And this message started to reach people who were tired, people who felt overwhelmed, people who were living exactly the same cycle she had lived before. And maybe that includes you. Because this is not a rare problem. This is everywhere. She wrote about what she called the sleep revolution, explaining that sleep is not just a biological need. It is a performance tool. It is a mental reset. It is a way to protect your clarity, your focus, and your emotional stability. And when you think about it, it makes sense. Because when you are well rested, you make better decisions. You have more patience. You see opportunities more clearly, but when you are tired, everything becomes harder. Small problems feel bigger. Your reactions become impulsive, and your ability to think long-term disappears. And this is why ignoring sleep is not a small mistake. It is a strategic error in your life. And here's where I need to challenge you again, because it is easy to listen to this and agree, but agreement without action changes nothing. So look at your routine. Look at your nights. How many times do you sacrifice sleep for things that are not truly important? How many times do you stay awake, scrolling, worrying, or working without real productivity, and then wake up tired, repeating the same cycle again? Because if you want to change your life, you need to change these small habits, not once, but consistently. She also started to introduce the idea of disconnecting, of creating boundaries with technology, with work, with constant information, because being always connected does not mean being productive. It often means being distracted. And distraction is one of the biggest enemies of growth, because it takes your time, your energy, and your attention without giving you real results. And if you do not control it, it will control you slowly, quietly, every single day. This new mission became bigger than just a message. It became a movement, because people started to realize that they were not alone, that their exhaustion was not normal, that there was another way to live, another way to succeed without destroying themselves in the process. And this shift in awareness is powerful, because once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. Once you understand the cost of your habits, you cannot pretend you do not know anymore. And as she continued to speak, to write, and to share this new vision with the world, her purpose became clearer and stronger. Because now she was not only building companies, she was helping people rebuild their lives, one habit at a time, one decision at a time. And this mission would soon take a new form, something more structured, more focused, something designed to reach even more people and create real, lasting change in the way we live and work. When your purpose becomes clear, you stop moving randomly, and you start building with intention. And this is exactly what happened when Arianna Huffington decided to take everything she had learned about burnout, stress, and balance, and transform it into something practical, something that could reach people not just through words, but through real tools and daily actions. And this decision led her to create Thrive Global, a company focused on helping individuals and organizations improve their well-being, their productivity, and their relationship with work and life. This was not just another business idea. It was a mission built on experience, on pain, and on a deep understanding of a problem that millions of people face every day. And that is the constant feeling of being tired, overwhelmed, and disconnected from what really matters. And what makes this powerful is that she was not speaking from theory. She had lived it. She had felt the consequences. And she had done the work to change. And this gives a different level of credibility, because people can feel when something is real. Thrive. Global introduced simple but effective ideas. Small changes that anyone could start applying, like taking short breaks during the day, creating clear limits between work and personal time, improving sleep habits, and reducing unnecessary stress. And at first, these ideas may seem too simple, too basic, but that is exactly why they work. Because real change does not come from complex systems. It comes from consistent actions, repeated every day. And this is where most people fail. Not because they do not know what to do, but because they do not do it consistently. And here is where I want you to pay close attention, because you might be waiting for a big opportunity, a big change, a perfect moment to transform your life. But that moment does not exist. Transformation starts small, with decisions that may not look impressive at the beginning, but grow over time. And this is what she focused on. Helping people understand that they do not need to change everything at once. They just need to start and keep going, even when it feels slow, even when results are not immediate. Companies around the world started to adopt these ideas, understanding that exhausted employees are not productive employees, that constant pressure leads to mistakes, low creativity, and high turnover. And slowly, a new conversation started to grow. A conversation about sustainable success, about creating environments where people can perform well without sacrificing their health. And this is a big shift, because for a long time, the culture was based on pushing limits without thinking about the consequences. But now, more and more people are realizing that this model does not work in the long term. But even with all this progress, the responsibility still comes back to you, because no company, no leader, no system can fully control your habits, your choices, your discipline, and this is where many people make excuses. They blame their job, their schedule, their situation, but at the end of the day, there are always small decisions you can make differently, small changes you can start applying, and these small actions, repeated consistently, are what create real transformation. And as her impact continued to grow, reaching millions of people and changing the way many organizations think about success and well-being. Her story was no longer just about her own journey. It became a message, a challenge, a call for action. And now that you have followed this path, from ambition to collapse, from collapse to awareness, and from awareness to purpose, there is only one thing left to face, and that is your own life, your own choices, and what you are going to do with everything you have just understood. Now I want you to stop for a moment and be honest with yourself. Not with me, not with anyone else, but with yourself. Because after hearing the story of Arianna Huffington, you cannot say that you do not know. You cannot say that no one told you. Because now you have seen what happens when ambition has no limits, when success has no balance, and when the body is ignored again and again until it forces you to stop. So the real question is simple. What are you going to do with this awareness? Are you going to continue living the same way, repeating the same habits, following the same patterns? Or are you finally going to take responsibility and change something, even if it is small, even if it is uncomfortable? Because here is the truth that most people try to avoid. Your life is being built right now. Not in the future, not when you have more time, not when things become easier, but now. In your daily decisions, in the way you use your time, in the way you treat your energy. And if you keep choosing distraction, exhaustion, and delay, then that is the life you are creating, step by step, day by day. And one day, you will look back and realize that you were always busy, but not always moving forward, always tired, but not always fulfilled. And that realization is painful. Much more painful than making a small change today. So let me ask you directly, what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your energy? Are you protecting it, or are you wasting it on things that do not really matter? Are you sleeping enough to think clearly, or are you running on empty every day, telling yourself that this is normal, that this is just how life is? Because it is not. It is a choice. And like every choice, it has consequences. And you are the one who will face them. Not your boss, not your friends, not the world. You do not need to change everything today. You do not need a perfect plan. You do not need to wait for motivation, because motivation comes and goes. What you need is a decision, a clear, simple decision to start doing something different. Maybe it is going to sleep earlier. Maybe it is taking a break during your day. Maybe it is saying no to something that drains you, or saying yes to something that actually matters. It does not need to be big, but it needs to be real. And it needs to start now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. And understand this clearly. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. Because when you control your habits, you control your life. And when you control your life, you create space for growth, for peace, for real success. Not the kind that looks good from the outside, but feels empty inside, but the kind that is strong, balanced, and sustainable. The kind that allows you to build, to grow, and to enjoy the process at the same time. So this is your moment. Not a dramatic moment, not a perfect moment, but a real moment. The kind that most people ignore. The kind that most people let pass. But you are still here. You listened until the end, which means something inside you is ready. Something inside you wants more, wants better, wants change. And now it is your responsibility to act on that, to take that small step, to break that old pattern, to build something new, because no one is coming to do it for you. The world is moving, the clock is running, and your life is not waiting. So make a decision, take control, and start now. Not tomorrow, not later, now. Because the version of you that you want to become is built by what you do today. And if you keep delaying, you keep losing time that you will never get back. So stand up, focus, and move, because the world is waiting for you. And every day you wait, it waits a little longer. And that is something you cannot afford anymore.